today is finally the day we are going to set up the temporary greenhouse. I have a helper today, and hopefully this won't take too long. If you're new to our channel, we are gardening in Zone 4 in Wisconsin. It is late April, and this is probably the nicest, sunniest day we've had yet. There's no snow. We are still getting freezing nights for the next few nights, but I want to get this set up and put my thermometer out in the greenhouse just to see how cold it gets at night. So let's get setting it up. And you can help. Okay. Put all these on the, yep.
suntanning tan here. I'm gonna get tan.
You're not getting tan, you're just getting hot.
What's this gonna do?
That's a thermometer, so we'll put it on one of the shelves in here, and then we can see how much warmer it is than the air.
Okay.
So tonight it's supposed to get down to, I think, 28. So we'll see if this keeps it any warmer. And then during the day, it should warm it up quite a bit. You said, oh, it is already warmer in there. We got the greenhouse all set up. I had a good helper, and I'm pretty sure we crushed the time that Grandpa and I put it together.
Yeah.
That took like 2 hours. So this went really fast. We got it together in maybe a half hour. A little bit of help getting the plastic on. Neither of us are tall enough, but I think tomorrow I will probably start putting some plants in here. I have a few things that are okay being outside when it's cooler, and I will get to start the hardening off process, which is exciting. Stay tuned to future videos. Hopefully we will be getting more flowers outside. And what do we want to say?
Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe.
Yep, do what she said. Swipe, as my family likes to say when we're switching subjects. It's actually been a few weeks later, and I have an update on the greenhouse. We are in early June, and I'm getting things out into the ground, and I have some thoughts and some experience with the greenhouse now. You saw that my daughter and I set up the greenhouse, and it went really well. It was very easy, probably because we had done it one other time, but it went really fast, very intuitive, and it just came together really quick, maybe a half hour, 45 minutes. The first night I put a thermometer in there just to see what the temperature would be overnight, and as we had read on some of the other reviews, the temperature inside the greenhouse was the same as the ambient air at night, so that was a good learning. Definitely wouldn't want to put anything out there early on because it was still, we were having freezing nights, or nights in the 20s actually, so that was a really good learning. You definitely want to watch what you put in there. If it can handle cooler temperatures, then watch your weather at night and see if it's going to get too cold. The next morning when I woke up, the greenhouse was empty, and I looked out my office window, and it was hanging about 1.5 feet off of the platform, so it had kind of slid back. I went out there, strapped it down a little bit tighter. I was trying to be fairly careful with the plastic and the straps that went over it. I didn't want to pinch it or cut it or anything. I got it reset back on the platform, and throughout the day I could hear this weird scratching noise as it would kind of wiggle its way off the platform. I ended up moving the location of the platform closer to the house, thinking that would provide a little bit more protection, not only with the house, but the retaining walls, which behind me is west. And that seemed to help a little bit. I was getting anxious that first day, and so I grabbed a couple trays of ranunculus and onions, both of which could handle cooler temperatures. And at that point in time, it was cool outside. It was way too cold for anything else to be out there. However, during the day, because I had the thermostat in there, I could monitor the temperature. If the sun was out even a little bit, the temperature inside the greenhouse skyrocketed. It got really hot really fast in there, which was kind of cool to see. I ended up having to vent it even on 35-degree days, opening one of the windows or maybe opening the door a little bit just to provide some airflow in there so it wasn't just a sauna. I continued to put my ranunculus and onions out there the next day, so 2 days after we set it up, and that day I happened to be busy doing other things in the house, and by the time I came out to look at them or move them back inside, the greenhouse had again slid 1.5 feet off the platform, and this time it took my trays of ranunculus and onions down with it, so they all flipped as they fell off the platform. It was actually okay because the ranunculus were in cell trays, so the little plugs, and I could easily pick them up and put them back where they belonged, so that wasn't a big deal. The onions looked a little worse for wear, but they're pretty tough, so that was okay. I ended up putting a strap around the bottom of the greenhouse to kind of hold the frame in place a little bit. And let's just be honest, my methods for solving things are, what do I have around me that I can quickly do? And they don't always work. So an hour later when I came back out, the greenhouse had slid off the platform again, and my ranunculus and onions fell over again. Yes, I understand. The second time, that was completely my fault. I should not have put plants in there. This time when the ranunculus fell out, they were not in nice little plugs. They were tossed salad. Instead of having 3 distinct varieties in my tray, I now have a mix, which is fine. I can get over that. I still had all of them. They looked okay. I did bring them back inside. Fool me 3 times. That didn't happen. So I was chatting with Dad, and another week went by. I was just monitoring the temperatures in the greenhouse. We were still having freezing temperatures at night, so I wasn't planning on putting anything out here quite yet. And he thought of putting C-clamps around the base of the frame on the greenhouse. And C-clamps are basically a flat piece of metal with a C, and they just hold a pipe. Oh, there's a hummingbird. They hold the pipe, or in this case, this framing rod. I think I used 1/2-inch C-clamps. I screwed those right into the platform, and that was rock solid. It was not going anywhere. So that perfect solution for that. The other change that I made over the next week or 2 was clamping the shelves to the frame with zip ties, and also putting, what's it called? Duct tape along the edge of each of the shelves. They were fairly sharp from where they were welded, and they were very easy to flip off. If you walked by them and bumped them with your elbow, the entire shelf would pop right off. So adding the duct tape and adding the zip ties secured them down, and that worked great. So by the 3rd week of having my greenhouse, I was able to start bringing plants out. I did harden them off a little bit by putting them in the greenhouse for just a small amount of time and then increasing that over the next couple days. I have some fairly cold hardy things that were able to spend some nights out here, and everything was working well. It had 12 shelves, which allowed 12 trays, plus on each of the shelves there was an extra little bit of room, so I could throw an extra pot, or if I had a smaller tray, I was able to fill up the bottom of the platform. So it was helping so much. It kept my grow room fairly cleaned out. It kept my grow room at a manageable level because I could keep everything out here, and they were thriving. Everything loved it. It did heat up very warm during the sunny days. I think the first day that it was 45 degrees out and there was sun, the greenhouse got up to 90 degrees, which was crazy. So I was down here opening the door, opening both of the windows. I ended up pulling some of the plants closer to the door so they would cool down a little bit. But it worked great. I was very happy with it. You know, at one point I was kind of thinking, oh, it'd be nice to have a few extra shelves in here. But then this happened. I was out doing chores one night. I looked up towards the house, and we were expecting to get a storm that night, but it wasn't that windy at that particular moment. But as I looked up at the house, I noticed that there was no longer a greenhouse standing up, and in fact it had tipped over. My first thought was, oh boy, I'm not gonna cry. I'm not gonna cry. And actually this is not something that would make me cry. But as I came up here and looked at it, it's completely ruined. So there was a storm rolling in the background. You could see the lightning, you could hear the thunder. I sent a note to Mom. I'm like, uh-oh, look what happened. And she came flying down the road. So we spent the next hour or so cleaning up the plants. We probably had 20 trays of plants out here. Everything had tipped over. It was smashed underneath the frame. You can see it's still strapped down. So the eye bolts worked great, but it was a bit of a mess. The other unfortunate thing, and this is what I'm most bummed about, okay, well, I'm bummed that the greenhouse didn't work. Let's be honest. That's a big bummer because it was working so well up until that point. But the other big bummer is that I had trays of a variety of different plants where I had multiple colors, and I had gone through the trouble of labeling them and organizing them in the cell trays so that I knew what color was in each cell. And when they tipped, everything got mixed up. It was just like a big salad. And we did our best to identify which type of plant this was, but there's no way we're gonna know what color things are. So that is a bit of a bummer. On a lot of things, it really doesn't matter. And to be quite honest, it really doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. But for instance, my snapdragons. I had 12 different varieties of snapdragons, and I had them still in the small soil blocks, so they got hit the worst because the soil blocks basically were airborne and they just mixed all together. So there's no way we're gonna know which snapdragon is which. Sure, you can tell a red from a yellow, but you probably won't be able to tell the white from the ivory from a light yellow, but it's okay. Most of the plants survived. The one really good thing about this, you got to find that silver lining. The one good thing is that many of my plants had been started weeks in advance or a month in advance, so they had developed a root system. So even though they were thrown all over the patio here, if we were able to tell what kind of plant it was probably okay because it did have a fairly strong root system, so it stayed intact. So while I did lose a bunch, I didn't lose everything, so it's okay. And I guess the other good thing is that any suggestion or work that my parents had done on this greenhouse, so the platform, the eye bolts for the straps, the C-clamps, putting the duct tape on, and the zip ties, all of that was still rock solid through this. The only thing that broke was what they purchased. So the big thing that kind of broke here, obviously, it's still strapped down and clamped down, but all of these plastic connectors, not all of them, a lot of these plastic connectors, you can see up here, they just broke. So I think having several windy days probably made the greenhouse wobble back and forth, and that wore on these plastic connectors. The other thing is the metal. You can see it's bent. It actually bent right in half over on the end. So it's not salvageable. The plastic is completely ripped. That's in the garbage. We can't salvage that. So really it's gonna have to go. There's not much that we can save on it or rework. The metal is bent so much that it's cracked and not usable even if we were to find new connectors. So I guess my thoughts on the greenhouse. If you happen to live in an area where you are completely protected from wind, even a little bit of wind, I'm not talking 50-mile-an-hour winds took this guy down. He had winds several days that were in the 20s, sometimes that were in just the teens. So it wasn't like we live in that windy of an area, but we did have several days where it was pretty windy and you could tell the plastic would move. And I'm sure that loosened things up over the course of time. But if you live in an area where you're able to protect something like this a little bit more, maybe on one more side than I have, it might be a great option for you. It certainly was nice to have something to start things off early, and I miss it. Bringing all this stuff in and out on the cold nights has been kind of a pain again, but it was a fun experiment. I'm glad I got to try it. It just is not going to work here. And I still don't understand how they think that you can just put a 4-inch stake in the ground holding the plastic on, and that's all you would need to use. So in the recommendations, you put the plastic over the top, and then there are grommets, maybe 6 or 8 or something, and they had little 4-inch stakes, landscape staples, that you hold it in the ground, and that's what would hold it in your yard. There is no way that would make it through a 5-10 mile an hour wind, at least here. I don't have a ton of tree protection or a windbreak or anything around here, but there's no way that would hold it. So be aware of that if you're looking to buy one of these. Make sure you have a plan. Again, everything Mom and Dad suggested or worked on worked great, and it was just too strong for the metal framing of this particular greenhouse. So hopefully that was kind of helpful and maybe more entertaining than anything. I hope you are able to get out in your garden or enjoy being outside, whatever it is you enjoy doing. We will see you in the next video. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.